Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. To make it to the top in the world of ballet requires not just extraordinary talent, but immense reserves of physical and mental determination. So imagine how much more it takes if your childhood is torn apart by civil war, hunger, and homelessness. Today's guest, Michaela DePrince, has made a remarkable journey from horrific suffering in Sierra Leone to accolades in the world of international dance. How on earth did she make it happen? Michaela DePrince, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
It's almost a cliche to talk about people who've made remarkable journeys, but you really have. And I want to know today, as you sit here with me as an internationally acclaimed ballerina, how connected do you feel to that little girl who was born and brought up in the first few years of her life in Sierra Leone?
I don't feel as connected as I used to be to her. I do have those days where I still have those horrible nightmares about my past in Sierra Leone, but really I'm just Michaela DePrince now. I'm not Mabinti Bangura anymore, and yeah.
What about your memories of Mabinti? I mean, of the girl that you were born as and raised by a family who were caught up in the most terrible way in Sierra Leone's civil war.
For me, it's mostly just little tiny images, and the only parts I really remember now, I don't remember the faces of my biological mom and father. I can see their figures, but I don't even remember what they look like. And if I'm thinking or dreaming of or having a nightmare, it's mostly about running from the rebels or the things people were yelling at me about, or it's mostly those things and just the emotions I was feeling. And that's what I wake up yelling and screaming about and having to recover from, and going to be able to recover from that and still being able to go to work that day.
It's interesting you say you feel less connected than you used to, and of course as you grow up the memories become more distant, but it's interesting to me that you've chosen to write about it for a young audience around the world. I mean, this book, Ballerina Dreams, has recently come out in Europe, and it's billed as a true story, and you do go into some of the detail of what it was like to be a girl at a time of war. So you don't want to completely forget about it.
No, I don't want to completely forget about it. It's made me who I am today, and it doesn't have as many details as Hope in the Ballet Sheet, but I think it's very important for people to not forget about the struggles that they've been through, because it creates who you are. And if I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't be as strong as I am today, because I go through horrible things every single day in my dance career. And people say things to me that maybe I would cry about, but it doesn't necessarily faze me anymore because of the things I've been said to before.
You talk about how strong you are today. Let's give people at an early point in this conversation a real sense of what you do and how you dance. So let's look at I think a performance from last year of you in the Nutcracker in the Dutch National Ballet.
Yes.
It's gorgeous to look at, and of course so many people know the Nutcracker, but then to think back to some of the very specific experiences that you went through as a young girl, it is almost unbelievable that you've come from there to here. So I do want you just to go into a little bit of detail about the degree to which Sierra Leone's war had a very direct and personal impact upon you. I mean, just catalogue a few of the terrible things.
Well, because of the war, my father was shot by the rebels. And my biological parents were the only people who believed in me because of my vitiligo. And in Sierra Leone, they didn't understand that vitiligo was just a skin condition.
And let me just stop you there for a second, because there will be people around the world who don't know vitiligo. But it's a pigmentation issue in your skin.
Loss of pigment in your skin. And so, but unfortunately, in Sierra Leone at the time, they just didn't have books or, you know, equipment to look up what this was. And so they discriminated me, they ridiculed me, they harassed me. And
to look at you, you look absolutely fine. But,
thanks.
but you do have this pigmentation issue.
From all the way from here, all the way along on my torso, on my hands and my arms and my back, and it gets more and more also when I'm older, and also some of them fade away. But it was a lot brighter also when I was younger. But they didn't understand it, so they called me the Devil's Child. And when my father was shot by the rebels, that meant that we didn't really have any source of income for food. So then my mom and I, my biological mom and I, had to move in with my uncle, but my uncle wanted nothing to do with me. And so when she passed away, because she ended up starving to death or had a disease, he didn't see any point in wasting his money or his food on a child who doesn't deserve it in his mind. So he sent me to the orphanage and never came to see if I was okay or anything. And then also in the orphanage, thinking, okay, well, I'm surrounded by people who might care about me. They ranked us by favorites. Number 1 was the favorite child, number 27 was the least favorite child, and because of my vitiligo, I was number 27, the least favorite child. And so that meant I got the smallest portion of food and the last choice of clothes. And you would have thought, you know, these kids have been through so much, they've lost their parents, or their parents weren't able to take care of them, that maybe we would show them that they are loved and that people care about them. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me at all. But I did have somebody in the orphanage who did care about me. Actually, 2 people, number 26, my best friend, and my sister. And she was number 26 because she was left-handed. And she used to wet the bed. And they didn't understand that, you know, well, they didn't understand a lot of things, and it's not their fault now that I understand that as an older person now. But before, I just, you know, I made it seem like it didn't faze me. I didn't care if they didn't like me.
But were you, in this orphanage, were you at least protected from the really brutal violence of that civil war?
Well, you'll see in a few minutes. So we had a teacher who came to the orphanage, and she was pregnant at the time, and the story is in the children's book. And she cared about me. She taught us English, and I used to always walk her to the gate, and she was the one who told me about the ballerina that I found, like the magazine, and that she was a ballerina, and you know, she was also telling me maybe you'll become this ballerina one day.
She was in a way the one who planted the vision in your mind of this beautiful, beautiful sort of mythical figure of the ballerina who could be happy and who could dance. Yeah,
and so I walked her to the orphanage gate, and these 2 rebels come intoxicated with either drugs or alcohol in their system with this little rebel, and they pull out their machete and they cut her open to see if it was a baby girl or a baby boy. And they were betting, so like one of them was like, no, it's going to be a boy, it's going to be a girl, and ended up being a girl. And they didn't like that because usually they would turn the little baby boys into young soldier rebels. And so they were upset, so they ended up cutting her arms and legs off in front of me, and I tried to go save her, and they did the same to me and cut my stomach open. And so because of that...
Sorry, how old were you?
I was about 3 years old. And because of that, those...
You said, sorry to interrupt, but you said to me earlier that, you know, you try to distance yourself.
Yeah.
Do you actually remember this?
Yes. But it's easier for me to tell it so I don't get emotional faster than to be able to, and it's easier for me now to say it with a wall instead of thinking about it, because it's too painful to think about and to feel those emotions, because then it's hard for me to be able to continue my day or to continue what I want to do in my life, because then it's just going to hold me back.
It's just, even as we talk about it, and it is so shocking to hear it, I'm wondering whether, as an artist, what you are, an extraordinarily expressive artist, using your body to speak to audiences around the world, how you can find the way to be so expressive when there's so much that's locked up inside you.
That's what has made my career a bit more difficult. I think I could have been more artistic sooner if I wasn't having to have that wall of emotions locked up for such a long time. And that's why I'm incredibly lucky to have the director I have now, because he understands that. But now I had to do this performance once, and I lost a brother when I got adopted, because I was assumed, you know, I'm going to lose people who I love, so I ended up having to, you know, also tell myself not to love people for quite a long time. And then I finally let somebody in again to, you know, that I cared about, and then he ended up passing away. And I had to do a piece about death, and I ended up crying on stage because I had to think about that fact. I had to think about my brother, Teddy. But, you know, that's what makes it so beautiful, though, is that you can use the things that you've been through to connect with the audience, and that is what art is. And that's what makes it so passionate. And I mean, sometimes it's hard, but at the same time, you have to have the right support system, the right people who can help you bring you back into reality.
Do you think, in a sense, finding your path through dance sort of saved you? Oh,
it's definitely what saved me. Definitely. I don't think I would be the person I am today. I don't think I would be, I don't think I would be happy at all if I hadn't danced. I would be still that angry little girl that I was.
And yet, you know, if we fast forward, you were adopted in the end by an American family, and you were taken to the United States into a comfortable, relatively prosperous home.
A wonderful home, yeah.
And that's when you got the opportunity to go to ballet school, to learn how to dance.
Yeah.
But, and here's what's interesting to me, even then, in that new, comfortable environment, you still had an enormous struggle. Because, let's face it, you were trying to make it in a world which is extraordinarily white, and where black dancers have an awful lot of sort of conventional wisdom which says, you know, black dancers simply can't do ballet.
Yep. I thought it was going to be completely easy, but then the older I got, the more I noticed there aren't any dancers who look like me. Why is that? But I had the opportunity, there was a dancer from the Pennsylvania Ballet, Heidi Cruz. She was the only one who looked like me. And she was also one of the people who was one of my role models, who told me to never give up on my dreams. Then there was another beautiful dancer, Lauren Anderson, who was also a role model for me. But out of how many dancers, how many black dancers, I'm sure there have been, why were there only 2?
Here's a quote from something you said a while ago. When I was young as a dancer, you said, I overheard one of the directors working with us saying, we don't put a lot of effort into the black girls because they end up getting fat.
Yeah.
That's a pretty horrible thing. And yet you said to yourself, never mind all this, this is still the world I want to be in.
Yeah, and maybe I'm a bit crazy, but the thing is, for me, I love proving people wrong. It's my thing that I love to do, and that's what got me through the whole thing in Sierra Leone. That's what's going to continue to get me through life, is to prove people that you can't just think somebody's going to be a certain way just because somebody else was like that. And that's not fair that you are going to give up on somebody just because you want to see them in a certain light. And that's
I think
wrong.
When you were 17, and we should remind people you're only 22 now, but when you were 17 and you wanted to join a professional company, you finally, you know, you looked at Europe and you found, or the Dutch National Ballet found you, and they offered you this position, and you said it felt like your Rosa Parks moment.
Yes. I was quite, and every single time this company continues to surprise me by promoting me and by believing in me, and I'm just incredibly grateful for this opportunity. And I'm incredibly grateful by the fact that in Europe in general, what I've experienced here also in London, when I dance with English National Ballet, is the fact that they're not looking at my skin color. They're looking at the fact that I'm just an artist who wants to move people and who wants to change people's lives by having them come see me perform.
In that spirit, let's look at our second clip of you recently in a performance of Swan Lake with the Dutch National Ballet. Now, Michaela, you say, you know, your ambition is to be an artist who is never judged on the colour of her skin.
Yeah.
But one cannot help noticing, as we look at you moving so beautifully there, that pretty much everybody else in the ensemble is white.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just wonder whether even today you feel there is an extra scrutiny on you, because you are still, it has to be said, unusual in the world you've chosen to live in.
Yeah, the thing is, I think it's time for that not to be a discussion anymore. That there is only one black ballerina at Dutch National Ballet. And I even thought in the Nutcracker, I had, in the beginning, there's a small Marie, a small Clara, and it was an Asian girl, and all of a sudden she turns black. For me, I think that's, why couldn't we have a little black Clara or Marie? So I think it's time for a change, and I'm hoping it's happening, and it's a slow process, but it needs to happen faster. It really does.
I suppose in a way, ballet is one of those art forms that is so steeped in tradition, you know, born out of the performances that began in Europe's royal houses and amongst the sort of elites of Europe. There's perhaps a snobbishness in ballet that isn't there in some other art forms. Yeah,
just the thing is, I think some people are scared of change, or the fact how people will respond to change. And now, like, I mean, you just saw in the video, I'm wearing pink tights. And that was a thing because most dancers wore white, and they wore pink tights to complete the line. But I'm brown, so for me to wear pink tights, it destroys my line completely. So now, in all my performances, I'm going to wear brown tights.
But you never think to yourself, you know what, this world is just beyond the pale for me. I'd rather, you know, there are so many other creative forms of dance, all sorts of wonderful contemporary dance. And I know you do some of that too.
I love it, it's fun, but it's not my...
You won't give up on the ballet?
No. I love wearing tutus, and I just love the romantic stories, and it's like as if I'm a little girl playing dress up, and I love the way it makes me feel, but I also love doing contemporary stuff and just being myself and being feisty but being romantic at the same time. It's just it's an amazing opportunity.
Let me now bring you back to personal stuff, and in particular your take on going back to Sierra Leone, because you've become an ambassador for War Child, an organization which is devoted to helping children caught up in wars around the world. And yet it strikes me that you've never been back to what is your native land, your home.
I would love to go back. I became the ambassador of War Child Holland just last year, and I would love to go back to Sierra Leone, but it has to do with the fact that if I'm ready mentally. I went to South Africa 4 years ago for the first time, and I was terrified because I was so scared that I would get the memories, or like exactly the full memories of the people's faces, the emotions rushing back, and what happens if I would freeze completely and I didn't have any family member with me. How would I be able to function and perform and do what I came to do in South Africa?
Suggests to me that there's still an awful lot of trauma in your mind.
Exactly, and it's not like I was just, a lot of the kids in the orphanage did not go through the amount of things that I went through. My sister went through a lot also as well, and my other sister, and it's just the thing is I need to be able to have the amount of support when I go there, and I'm going to go back. I want to start a school there. I want to start an art school there. So it's going to happen.
Because it just strikes me that that we talk about inspirational figures, but I mean, what you could offer the kids, the young people of Sierra Leone is something extraordinary, a story like no other.
No, I definitely would love to go back, but I don't know if you know my schedule. I work from 10 to 6 every day. I barely even get a week off during the summer. But it's going to happen. I'm actually hoping maybe I can go this summer with another ambassador, an ambassador here actually in War Child UK.
I mean, I know this is a very intrusive question and maybe raises lots of painful issues for you, but do you know, for example, what has happened to your uncle, the man who in many ways gave you away to the orphanage, who refused to acknowledge you as part of his family?
Well, I've gotten a Facebook message from him asking for money, also from the person who ran the orphanage, because of my story and stuff. And the thing is, at first I was really angry, but I've forgiven him, and I've forgiven the person who ran the orphanage. And the thing is, they don't deserve my forgiveness, but I'm a bigger person, and I think, there's no reason for me to hold a grudge anymore, because It's not going to help me move on with my life. And I deserve a lot more than to focus on their, you know, what they did to me before. And they don't deserve me even to talk about them, you know.
There's another aspect of this that raises important moral and ethical issues, and that is you are by no means the only child who was plucked out of difficult, sometimes awful circumstances in Africa and adopted by families desperate to, you know, get a child for their family in the rich West, the United States, but it happens in other Western countries too. Are you a great believer in that the idea that that is the right and proper thing to do?
To adopt.
To adopt, to allow international adoption,
I think
so that kids are plucked far away from their home countries and cultures.
I think it's absolutely, for me, I believe it was the best thing. One, it saved my life. I would not be alive today.
You really believe that?
No, I was very sick. I had 106 fever. Fahrenheit, I don't know what it is in Celsius.
Yeah, well, that's dangerous, yeah.
Yeah, and I would not be alive today. I also had a hernia where my organs were coming out, so no. But I also think the thing is, it's very important to also, you know, educate your children about the culture they came from, so they understand, you know, what they've been through, so they don't forget. Because some kids, they do forget where they've come from, and then they feel like they're missing something. But I think I think adoption is an amazing thing, and I'm just so grateful. And my other 11 kids in my family, but the other 9 who are adopted are so grateful for their life.
The flip side of it, and I know this doesn't apply to you, but the flip side of it, and it came out in a major report in 2012 from the African Child Policy Forum, and I'm just quoting a tiny bit of it, saying, the majority of so-called orphans adopted from Africa have actually at least one living parent, and many of these children have been trafficked or sold by their parents. Yeah. And if you allow international adoption, then the message from a variety of different sources, including that major report, is that it leads to these terrible situations, abuse of the system.
That's the thing, and I saw this documentary a few years ago about that, and that's what really upsets me, because then people believe in, and then they see these negative things about adoption, and they don't see how many positive outcomes can actually happen through adoption, and that makes me really, really sad, because these children deserve an amazing life.
Let's end by talking about identity.
Okay.
You've gone into a world which is in some ways so alien to you and your background, and yet you are determined to thrive in it and become a major star in it, and it seems to be working. Also, you've switched countries from Sierra Leone, and now you are fully American in the way you've been brought up. Characterize your identity for me as you see it today. I
think my identity is very European, not very American.
More than American, really?
Yeah, very. I think, yeah, very, especially with,
I think you're saying especially with the way America is today.
I think it's just the way things are going, and I'm just a bit sad with how things are going in America right now. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to going back to Africa one day, and, you know, starting up my school and learning more about my culture, and bringing also people I've worked with to help me start this school up, and having them learn about my culture, and giving kids an opportunity to just have the chance to have that taste of opportunity that I've been growing up with. And I think everybody deserves that chance. Oh, maybe I don't like to dance, or maybe I do love dancing, or maybe I love to move this way, or just to express themselves in a way where they don't have to talk.
And when you go back, because you say you will you go back as an African?
In what way?
Just in the way that you present yourself to, for example, the kids that you will talk about this amazing story of yours to in Sierra Leone. Will it be an African story?
I'm not quite sure. I haven't thought about it. I'm going to pretty much explain to them how I got where I came from, how I got to where I am today, and see if they accept it for what it is. And I guess that's it.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
An amazing, extraordinary story.
Thank you.
And Michaela DePrince, I thank you
for being
on
much.
HARDtalk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.